So I want to welcome everyone to Conservation Coffee. So today on our edition, we're going to talk about heirs property. So first of all, I hope everybody has grabbed their favorite cup of coffee or tea, and we're going to get into something that's very important to both landowners and communities, and that's heirs property and conservation. So we're very happy to have everyone here today. And for those of you that are going to watch later on YouTube, we welcome you then. So get comfortable because in honor of our guest of honor, I'm going to throw out the pun. We're brewing up some knowledge. Welcome to our special session, and it is sponsored by the National Association of Conservation Districts. So what we're going to talk about today is something that affects so many families and communities across the country. So whether you're a landowner or just curious about this topic, today's conversation promises to be rich in insights and practical advice. So just sit back and relax, and we're going to get started. But today, I want to introduce our special guest. We're going to be joined by two incredible conservation leaders, and that's Monty Osterman and Nancy Carter, both of whom have been instrumental in developing some very important resources and guidance that creates a framework to address the challenges of heirs property. So we're going to ensure that families can keep their property for future generations. This is what our mission is today. So without further ado, Monty, Nancy, if you all would like to introduce yourselves.
All right. Will do. Nancy, go ahead. You go first.
Hi, I'm Nancy Carter. I'm a member of Monty's committee, the Outreach Subcommittee. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm a member of the Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District and have been now for 13 years, formerly on the Charlotte City Council. So bringing that knowledge into this and love what I do with the NACD.
Well, I'm Monty Osterman. I am the chair of the Racine County, Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Committee. I am the state of Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association board chair and represent Wisconsin at NACD as the director there, and serve on the District Partner Relations Committee, the Climate Committee, and also as the chair of the Outreach Committee. And I am trying to figure out here how to make this thing work.
You can, Monty, down at the bottom, you can actually go down to the bottom where you see those two arrows next to the question mark, and you can open it up there.
Right here?
Yep.
Okay. Ah, there we go.
Yep. And then you can just use your arrow button to.
How do I get this out of the way here? Okay. All of this down here, how does that go away?
We can't see it, so it really doesn't have to go away because you need that there to flip.
All right.
So,
well, so heirs property came about, this initiative came about from discussions that we had at the beginning of the formation of the Outreach Committee. We set about immediately putting together a work plan, and that involved discussions amongst ourselves. It involved discussions from many, almost all of the other directors at NACD, staff members, outside agencies, partner agencies, formal interviews, informal interviews, outreach, phone calls, face-to-face, any kind of way that we could gain information to figure out what it is that outreach means and what the most significant problems were that we could work on and possibly provide solutions for. So in July of 2023, we solidified that work plan. And many of those areas of concern revolved around responding to previously unserved or folks who had properties or operations at risk. So that led us to Nancy doing a whole lot of research into what heirs property was and just how it affects the conservation districts. And I'll let Nancy talk a little bit about how she got onto that.
That was at an annual meeting 2 years ago, Monty. There was a wonderful seminar about heirs property that was so informative. And coming out of that meeting at the doors, there were a group of people talking to each other, and they were from the U.S. territories. They were discussing what a huge problem this is for them because they could not put projects on land that has no title or clear title. They could not get help with BMPs. They could not get federal funding, even for FEMA disaster relief. It piqued my interest, and looking into it, it became truly relevant. I live in the southeastern area, and it's concentrated there as well as into Texas with the Spanish-held lands, but it is all over the U.S. More than 6.4 million acres in the U.S. are affected by this. So we're looking to help people we haven't helped before. We're looking for new allies, new contacts. We're looking how to help those that we have not served before. Here is a real area where we fit because there is trust built between farmers and the districts. The districts know how to handle federal funding and grants. They have BMPs. They are the obvious connections in this area. So thanks to Monty, he put me on a path of discovery, looking through the internet and making connections. The staff has been so supportive and so helpful and so knowledgeable, and I'm truly grateful.
And I will admit, by the way, if anybody has any comments or questions, just jump right in. I cannot see on my screen who may have their hand up. I will say that I had no idea that this heirs property issue was a thing. In a vague sense, maybe I had heard a few things throughout the years. Man, there's a couple people around who can't do something with their property, and they can't put, we would try to do a project, and there was a cloudy title, and so everything just kind of came to a halt. And it was kind of, well, that's your problem. You need to take care of that, I guess, and we move on. But it became more and more apparent that there were just tons of issues. So what is it? It can be it's a cloudy title. It's an unclear legal status of a property. It could be a grandparent farmer who donate or leaves all of his land in a very vague will to all the grandchildren. Well, what does that mean? And how do you work through that when half the grandchildren live 500 or 1,000 miles away? Who's paying the taxes on that property? Who's actually farming it? Who could almost even lay a claim for adverse possession? So there are many different routes that get a family to a point where they're locked up in their land without the ability to take advantage of it. So it's one of the most interesting slides is this one right here. First of all, you have to understand what the risk is and where the risks are. When you look at this map, you can see that this is a percentage of properties that are at risk potentially of being in, of having an heirs property issue that limits their ability or completely eliminates their ability to receive federal funding, emergency funding, conservation, cost share, anything like that. And you can see here that the estimates here are that in these areas that, like the yellow areas here, up to 1.5% of those properties are affected, and up to 50% in the dark blue areas. Now you look at this here, Alabama, okay, is highly affected. West Virginia is almost 100% affected if you look at this. But look over here, what's interesting, these plain states and mountain states, Why do you think that would be? Well, indigenous populations, where things were passed down simply by the wave of a hand. And you see that in these Western states, man, right here. Of course, we all know Nevada is mostly BLM land, but right through here, and it's amazing to me that there's this much property. We didn't have statistics in Wisconsin, New York, and some of these other states here, but you can kind of see the trend. One that really surprised me was Indiana. You look at Indiana here, all along that state line and throughout the river valley here, that really surprised me also. So there are ways to mitigate this problem. But when you look at strictly just African American landholders, over 100-year period, running down from 16 million acres to 3 million acres lost to heirs property issues. You can see that Hawaii has a significant problem also, and some of Alaska. And up here in Maine, I mean, just kind of weird where these things are coming up here. So we talked about the traditional farmers in the South, which you can see most of this are issues in the South. Obviously, during the time of slavery, into reparations, there were not a lot of records kept, and those that were, many of them were destroyed, during that wartime. So there's little to look at and to track with. Again, 16 million acres down to under 3 million today, when back in 1910, 14% farms were operated by African American farmers, down to 1.5% today. So you can see the population that is disproportionately affected by heirs property issues. So these threats, could be the immediate loss of land just because of unpaid taxes. Okay. Or maybe somebody claims possession because they don't necessarily are on the title, but they can show adverse possession. Partition action can be forced by one person's demands to finish an estate. So there are a lot of things that are at risk, and as we know, many families are I want to say they're torn apart by this. So all of a sudden, one person can create a major problem for a producer. So what do? First thing is to get a farm and tract number, which is hard to do, to get those tract numbers if you can't prove ownership. Creating the will, document. There's a whole list of things that can be done to prevent this. And then there are things that can be done to fix this if it is in play on a particular piece of property. And that's part of what our report has done out of the outreach committee, which is right now in peer review for adjustments, to provide a toolbox for fixing these issues, a step-by-step almost process to go through to understand what can be done to help, and once and for all to make it, not just temporary, but fix it once and for all. There's a whole list of targets here: land control, nonprofit, pro bono help. We have a lot of solutions, but they require a significant investment in time and people, and legal action, legal help. That would be, to me, the biggest thing that we could do, is to provide legal representation to walk families through the process of reestablishing firm control of that land.
Could
Um,
I join in there, Monty?
Go right ahead.
To me, one of the most important things, and we'll come up to this later, is the Uniform Partition Act. And it has to be passed by the states. We have 22 states that have passed this, 6 that have it in the process, somewhere in the process. But if you do not have one of those, you can't access the federal funds that will help. We have federal funds through the farm bills that fund for genealogical research and legal assistance. And then the FSA offers funds for mediation. So you have to have that Uniform Partition Act in place to access those federal funds. And that's one of the things that I think we could do is lobby DC to put that word out, and then at home, lobby our state legislatures to get those Uniform Partition Acts in place.
I see my entire state is dark blue. It affects almost every family I know, including my own. Wow. That's very telling.
That's me, Monty. As you know, I'm part of your team with your committee, and when I've listened to you all talk about the heirs property and the issues that you have with heirs property, it's so familiar to me and my own journey here on my farm in West Virginia. We're very fortunate that the farm that I live on, the family has always been good to deed and have titles. And they also were a very small family of only 2 children each through 9 generations. However, we do have right-of-way and easement issues with heirs property on this farm. And we also have heirs property issues on another piece of land that I own. So your statistics on West Virginia is very correct. A friend of mine just found out that she has an heirs property issue with over 70 heirs to this property. And I think one of the things that we run into also is because of the minerals. So when we're looking at states that have minerals and mineral rights, it really becomes difficult at best, because you may only have surface rights and another company may have mineral rights, and you get into a situation there. So I think that absolutely, heirs rights are so important for people to start with educating themselves.
Yeah, and it can be very daunting, and it can be it can be disappointing, and it can just completely crush your motivation if you're trying to do something decent on your land, especially with trying to implement conservation practices, or like the slide talks about here, relief from natural disasters in North Carolina, in that area in West Virginia. I mean, they just found that out in a hard way.
Exactly.
Yep.
And you cannot have a conservation easement.
Yeah.
So the effort to save farmland is destroyed as well.
And a conservation easement normally is not, it's a fairly simple thing to do, but it is very complicated when you if you can't show clear title. So the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, these are the states that have enacted it, along with the green states who are introduced. So Nancy, why don't you go ahead and explain a little further on that, just exactly what the Uniform Partition Act does?
It's helpful in protecting those who live on that land. One person can be approached by an outside interest saying, "Oh, I'll give you $2,000 for that little piece of land that you have." That person can then sue to have the land sold to settle the estate. So the person who is farming that land, living on that land, loses his land, loses his home, loses his being, what he is doing. And it's a huge thing. So the Uniform Partition Act ensures that the owner is informed that this process is going to be happening. They have time then to gather the family together, make a decision on what the land can do, and they also have time after that point to try to gather together enough money to settle that estate, to buy out that land completely. That's what this Uniform Partition Act is doing. It's trying to protect those who have invested themselves in the land, love the land, are productive on the land.
And doesn't it also prevent predatory speculation on those properties during that process?
That's the end defense, yes.
Right. So what the outreach committee has done is create a resolution that is being brought to the annual meeting to hopefully adopt by the board of directors regarding advocacy for the Uniform Partition Act. And so what do we do? How can we help right here? One of the biggest things, besides, connecting affected owners or property users to federal funding, is help them with the research and the legal aspects. And then, even set up a method that both sides of the equation can work through the problem and the issue to come to a resolution.
And to work with the families for the mediation, Monty. That's where sometimes those problems rise. And all of these three things can be federally funded. So it doesn't take from NACD funds. It actually adds to the coffers so we can be more effective.
The conversation that I had with NRCS Chief Terry Cosby showed me that they have about $8 million available for to work through this issue, including mediation. But they've only been able to use each year maybe about 3 million of it, because they have trouble actually finding people that are willing to trust the government and that are willing to go through the steps. It can be very difficult. It can be onerous. It can be so very involved that people just give up. And so NRCS does have some funding available, and that's where the conservation districts can shine, making those connections, identifying those properties, and connecting those folks to those resources that are already available, and the increased resources too. They're always willing to do that. We got to get all the sides together.
And look what that does, Monty. That puts us into contact with people with whom we don't necessarily have dealings, with lawyers, with genealogical researchers, with people who own this land, with people who do mediation. So it expands our network out into the world to show them what we can do, how we're willing to help, and how effective we can be, and then the benefits to the land and the farmer themselves. That to me is the end. To help that one individual who is under this massive threat and see what we can do. You'd mentioned adverse possession. It's also known as squatters' rights. And that to me is a term that kind of clouds that possibility. States have different laws about it, but it's usually if one person is involved in living on the land, making the land work, producing from the land, paying the taxes, hopefully improving the land. And that's hard when you don't have a title. But if you can prove those things, sometimes squatters' rights can be invoked and they can save their land, their home, and their profession. So that's one of the possible solutions to all of this. It's not one that's necessarily popular. The other part is, how do you help the other land owners potentially not be divested of their interest? So there are lots of things to discover. And I think NACD, the districts are ideally positioned to help people under this threat through their issues.
So I think it's probably important to point out too that with adverse possession and squatters' rights, that is for producing land, and there is generally in all states an extended period of time that has to be shown. But that is one of the ways that some people will try to work towards heirs property rights. And what we've found in the past is that, it can work both ways. It can swim upstream and it can swim downstream, because if a person is on the property and they're not working the land, they're not caring for the land, oftentimes they can go in and sometimes even be removed. So some people try to kind of fly under the radar so that they can get to that time period with squatters' rights. And we always want to be cognizant that we watch out for that as well. So people should definitely get out there and educate themselves first and foremost, which is what we're doing here. We're trying to create a toolkit to give them the information that they need, where to get started. But it's always the best idea to check your local laws. Check your local, state, county, city, borough, town laws, because that's really where the hard line is going to be set.
It also applies to forestry land, if you want to think of that as working land as well, Amy. And I agree with you. It does work both
Working
ways,
lands.
and we
Yes.
have to be sensitive to that.
Yep. Any working lands at all. And, if you think about it, most lands are working lands. That's going to be, anything, even, in my mother's neighborhood in Sefner, Florida, they've had some heirs properties in a subdivision, because of the lands being working lands close to naturalized areas.
I feel that what we can do can reflect to other areas that are trying to work with this as well, like municipalities. I'm a former city council member, and I know that through the National League of Cities, practices like these, we had workshops on them, so we could share it with others, like the counties, the municipalities, the states.
So that is a very brief description of what heirs property is. It just touches the surface, and what we found, we thought this was going to be like a 2 or 3 meeting, 2 or 3 or 4 month gig for our committee, establish a policy, decides it and move on. And no, we kept just peeling back that onion more and more, and it just kept growing, and it became a whole, it took on a whole life of its own. Man, I am very proud of this committee for digging deep into this, and bringing up a problem that honestly a lot of people really don't want to have to deal with, but it is absolutely a perfect issue for conservation districts to dig into. If there was ever a group of constituents that need our help and have almost no idea how to deal with this, those affected by heirs property is it. That's like the big one, and so I hope that we can, through this toolkit that is just about completed now, be able to provide some real life, hardcore solutions to conservation districts, and that they can pass along. And it's written
Monty,
in such a fashion that it can just be, passed right to property owners and start, running through checkoff list.
there's another group that we really haven't touched on except collaterally, and that's the Native American population. There are significant areas that are impacted by heirs property on the reservations and off the reservations with their Native American allies. And we can extend our studies into that area, it will be different because that is federally run. And it will be challenging, but I think we can help there as well. But that would be an extension of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And if you remember that slide, the one I commented was to me the most interesting. We saw out in the western states, and a lot of the areas where reservation had been established, there's a huge effect. I think that there's one part of this where nobody really knows who owns a lot of those properties, and man, if you're there are a number of those that are in a tax exempt status also. So how do they even have an opportunity to figure out what the issue is and who is affected? So yeah, it's quite a conundrum. I guess I would look for comments, feedback, questions, insults, anything.
Dr. Reynolds has been such a resource for us as well. She's one of those folks who has delved into this and has personal experience also. Carlos Tessitore on our committee from the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, has had that problem in his family and worked through it. And the U.S. Virgin Islands has passed the Uniform Partition Act.
So let's see.
Dr.
Ron
Reynolds,
has his
anything?
hand up.
Yeah, first, I just want to thank Nancy and Monty for the work you've done on this. As a professional forester, I've run across heirs property issues. We never called them heirs property. It was always a matter of talking about having clear title and those kinds of things. And if the family didn't want to solve it, as a professional forester, I could just walk away from it. But I think as conservation district people, we really can't walk away from it. This has given us an opportunity to solve this. Monty and kind of drug me onto this, the subcommittee here. But every time I meet with you guys, I learn something new that I didn't know that was a problem to me or as a solution to solve. But I just want to thank Nancy particularly and Monty both. What a great presentation. You guys are continually bringing new information and education, and I just hope a lot of other people in this association kind of review this video later. It's really, you guys did a phenomenal job. You showed passion. That's all I got to say. Great job.
Well, I'm going to put it all on Nancy because I kind of rode along with her, but man, she really dug into this and just did a fantastic job. And every time we talked about it was, and did you know, and did you know, and did you know this, that, and the other thing? And we got to Boston to meet with the DPR committee and make that presentation. And all of a sudden there were people on their phones texting, and whispering in the phone, and the room started filling up. They were calling people in, to listen to this discussion, and it got deep and wide. And, let's just say it got really, really interesting from the stamp. I never thought it would go there. Happily, I think we actually, through this effort, were able to move the knowledge needle forward. I think we were, which, is an achievement in itself, I think.
I agree with you. I think that, we're definitely taking steps in the right direction. It's such a broad, it's just every state, every town, everything is so different. It's just hard to pinpoint exactly what the needs are, where they are, which I think leads us to the fact that locally led works, because we really have to pinpoint what's working at the local level, and especially for heirs property, where everything is so different from even where I am from county to county. It's completely different. So it certainly is working to get this out and these toolkits at a local level So, Monty, Nancy, you all did an amazing job. And I just want to put it out there that just to summarize, so what we're going to look at doing, when we're advising those who say, oh, I have this issue, what am I going to do? How do I move forward? The first things that we want to do is have them look at understanding the ownership, understand your deeds, understand when's the last time you had a deed. You can find those in your local courthouses. So research that deed first. Go get copies. Find out where the disconnect happened, right? That I think is going to be the very first step, so that you have that documentation and you're not sending legal professionals out to do it, because it's something that a landowner can do themselves. So from there, they're going to look at, do I need to consult a legal professional? We can give them the toolkit of how to get started, but in any situation, do they need a legal professional, or is this something that they can go before the family and say, hey, can we work this out? That I think is an individual decision, because all families are different. Can you start with working with your conservation district and your local USDA resources? Absolutely. That was in the PowerPoint presentation. You want to get a farm and a tract number. You want to have all of those tools on hand and be ready. And then educate. Work with those who are learning more, your conservation districts. Read all of the information that's out there. Find our toolkit, watch this webinar. We can really get it out there and really help people, I think. And I think that those are the important topics. Is there anything that either of you would add that you think would be a good first step?
I think looking at the family, Amy, going online, there's some free genealogical research avenues online that can help you establish who is your family member, where do they live? And that's another first step that the individual can take, because it takes everybody agreeing. It's difficult, but if you get everybody agree, you can establish that ownership. You can work for an LLC, a limited corporation, or you can establish a trust. And then the family has to establish who is that person who's going to manage or direct the use of that land. But that's what a family can do. And right there, standing beside you, supporting you, is your district.
I agree. I think that's really great. Monty, do you have anything that you want to add?
This is one of those things that keeps me up at night. You start thinking about all the different possibilities, and I'm one of those, I immediately try and go into fix it mode, right? And I have so many different ideas on how what we might be able to implement. I have been actually talking to local title companies that it's what they do every day. They research title, and we're starting to have discussions on how we might be able to create within this toolkit an actual prescriptive process that could be plug and play for anybody experiencing the issue. Just go through this checklist and perform it the way a title company would. From that standpoint, there are a lot of shortcuts available through those types of companies. So, but they're a for-profit business and they want to be funded to be able to do that. So maybe we could get some find some monies for that to happen. But the biggest thing is that this brought such an awareness that to an issue, an underlying issue, and it's not been an emerging issue. It's been there for 100 years plus, right? And I think from everything that I've seen, we're the first organization, the first national organization to really start to bring it to light. There are a lot of partners, a lot of people that are working on this. And Nancy, I know you've got a list of folks that other organizations that work exclusively on this. But the connection that the conservation districts and NACD has with our federal partners is huge. And I think we're the first organization of our type to really start to bring this to light you know, to try and make it a national issue with a resolution, you know, for that. Some of the where were some of those you remember where some of those organizations were, Nancy, that were
Freedmen Heirs. Freedmen Heirs is wonderful. There are lots of land grant colleges that are now getting invested in research, having seminars. We're going to have a seminar in Mecklenburg County in an urban area for heirs property, particularly drawing farmers in around. And we're working with the local branch of the co-op from NC State and from NCA&T. It's absolutely exciting to see these universities, and I think Dr. Reynolds could speak to that as well. And I know that Dr. Lutrina Staley, who has been instrumental in our work, she has just been the best support ever. And Kanisha, you had some wonderful ideas when we talked the last time. What can you suggest to us today?
I picked up my book. I did this training. It's Understanding Heirs Property at the yeah, at the community level. And this training really started with funding, I believe, through FSA to the Socially Disadvantaged Farmer and Rancher Policy Research Center at Alcorn. And so there's a group of just experts in these areas at the university level and nonprofit and other organizational level that are, you know, going around and doing this training to mostly university staff, extension staff. So maybe that's where this new spread increase in education from the university is coming from, Nancy. But yes, this is a really complex issue that spans so many different areas. Legal, there's just mediation, communication, tax. It's pretty intense, pretty complex, and it will probably take a long time to dig into all these areas and answer a lot of the questions that, you know, the families that are dealing with heirs property will have. But I am really just grateful and happy to see that we've started this work at NACD, and just look forward to resources and support that will come from this group and our bigger group conservation districts on supporting landowners and farmers and families with heirs property issues. So thanks to your subcommittee and your group for taking this on, Monty and Nancy.
all right.
I
Well-
just also wanted to say thank you. My name's Jackson Moody. I'm a new membership and development coordinator at NACD, and was just happy to be able to come and listen to this. And I had heard about heirs property before, but never in the context of the work we do. So it's just interesting to add another layer to it like this.
Don't you think it's a match?
I think it's, yeah, I think it definitely a concern for, you know, getting BMPs implemented and keeping farmland. And I've heard how in the past, well, like wealthy landowners in Hawaii have used it to acquire beachfront property by what you talked about, by acquiring like a share of it and then forcing that sale. And no, it is concerning.
Yeah, there are, you mentioned one thing, Jackson, that I wanted to kind of throw out there earlier and forgot. There are huge implications for farmland preservation. Huge implications. And I started kind of looking at that with our, because we just in Wisconsin, I mean, we just redid, we were successful in changing the farmland preservation legislation, which was amazing that we got it done, and amazing that we actually had, you know, interest in it, you know, from the legislators. But we got it made, we got it done. It's a better program now, more money available. But as I started looking at that and throwing that up against the heirs property issue, it scared me enough that I just kind of stopped.
Mhm.
Yeah, I am nowhere near qualified to dig into, heirs property as it relates to farmland pres. But it is a very, very important aspect of heirs property. You could potentially, from what I am deciphering from it, there are ways to completely lose a farmland preservation program because of this,
But you raised something else, Monty, that is so important to this. We have the experience in NACD and the districts about lobbying our legislators.
Yeah.
We are connected to them, and we should be because we're elected officials also. And lobbying them on this issue can bring us closer to them because those state legislatures will be doing a good thing for people with land in this situation. They should know that. They should know that this is an opportunity to help those whom they should be serving.
Yep.
And we can do it.
right.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%, Nancy. I think that, I'm no longer an elected official, but when I was and when we were, that's what we're there for, is to help things move along for the communities. So I think we are just about out of time. We're coming up close to the 4 o'clock hour. Does anybody have anything else to add before I give a few reminders on behalf of Dr. Rivers? No? Okay. Well,
Thanks to Monty.
what is
Thanks
it,
to Monty.
Monty?
Thanks to Monty for letting us do this.
Absolutely.
I'm just a conduit. You guys are the hard workers.
You're our leader.
Well, you set the bar pretty low there, Ron. All right, what have you got for us from Ariel?
All right. So she wanted me to remind districts that invoices are coming out as we speak. So be on the lookout for those. If you don't receive them, you may have a filter in your email inbox. Check with Jackson or Ariel for your invoicing. So the breakout sessions have been announced for the annual meeting in Salt Lake City. That's coming up in February. We're all very excited about it. Get ready. We're going to be having some great learning opportunities and just a little something that there might be a really cool education topic as well. Not that I would abuse my current position as the faux Ariel and, put that out there. But, and we're also very excited. NGLI has been chosen. Make sure if you are not signed up for eResource, you must sign up for eResource because that's where all of the information is pumped out for NACD and they always have great information. And that's even where our job board is. So if you're interested in working with NACD, that's where you want to watch out for those jobs to be announced. If you're not getting eResource, then you're missing out. So make sure that you sign up for that. And again, I want to thank Monty Osterman and Nancy Carter for all of the hard work that they have done. Dr. Staley has been a true MVP as team lead on the outreach subcommittee. She's done a wonderful job with the Heirs property, working with Nancy, working with Monty, doing the research, writing, editing, checking. She's just done phenomenal work and we appreciate her so much. And last but not least, Jackson, welcome. Welcome to the fold. Welcome to NACD. Nicole, you've also started recently. Welcome to NACD. We are so happy to have both of you. I know that you're going to enjoy your positions. I know you're going to enjoy your work. It's a wonderful place to be. And we have wonderful people as well. So,
Hey, wait a minute. Let's hear from Nicole.
Yeah, there's Nicole. We can hear from Nicole before we go.
Hi, I'm sneezing away. That's why I shut my camera off. It's really chilly here. I'm from North Dakota. I don't know if you guys seen. I'm the Northern Plains Region Representative. I come from the Rolla County Soil Conservation District. I took care of the Alliance Climate Smart. It's nice to meet all of you. And if any of you need anything from me, please reach out. If you have any information to share, please reach out. That's even better.
Well, hi, Nicole.
Sorry.
Welcome.
Nicole and I have had a lot of late night chats lately. We've been catching up on a semi-training. She's on my team with education, so I'm super excited about that. We have been able to sit up late and chat and get to know each other, and I'm super excited about it. And Jackson, I got to reach out to him as well, and I think that we seem to have an awful lot in common. I imagine I'm going to run into him at a fun festival or maybe on a mountaintop hiking somewhere sometime soon. So I think they're a perfect fit for NACD, and I hope that folks that do watch the webinar from YouTube will reach out to them, get to know them, introduce yourselves, especially if you're in Nicole's region, reach out to her. If you're a member, reach out and say hi to Jackson. So I think that's all that we have for today. I hope that I have at least done Ariel an honor of being the pretend Ariel for the day. My laugh is not near as wonderful, but I'll work on that for next time she needs somebody to stand in. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. And for those of you on YouTube, I'm sorry you missed out on this fun in person, but at least you do get to catch up.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
We'll see ya.
all. Merry Christmas.
Bye.